Michael Payton and Mark Sosha admit they don't agree on much, but one issue they do agree on is free speech. In 2008, Payton, a member of a campus atheist group, and Sosha, the president of a pro-life group, came together to fight the student union at York University in Toronto, Ontario.
It was a debate on the abortion issue. Michael Payton was going to represent the pro-choice side, and our group had picked someone actually from Alberta, his name is Jose Ruba, to argue the pro-life side. And what happened was, a few minutes before the debate was scheduled to take place, the people on the council of the student center said that to have such a debate was misogynistic, that it wasn't acceptable discourse at York, that it was akin to arguing as to whether or not a man ought to be able to beat his wife. So they said that the debate has been settled and that there's no room for it on the campus.
Misrepresent what he has actually said.
Sosha says the real issue was a speaker from the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform. The group promotes the Genocide Awareness Program, a controversial display which uses graphic photos of aborted fetuses and compares abortion to slavery and the Holocaust.
I believe the issue that some people had with the methods of Jose Ruba was that he was going to show an actual video of an abortion, and some people questioned the authenticity of the video. They felt that such a video did not have a place in the debate. The debate should have just been verbal, and neither side should have been resorting to visual aids.
Even if it's a really offensive idea, and I do think it is an offensive idea to make comparisons between abortion and the Holocaust or abortion and slavery, even though it is offensive, if it's in a closed room and people want to hear it, and if they think that that's an important part of the issue, then it ought to be discussed.
Though the student union canceled the event, school administrators welcomed the debate in another building. But things got worse when in the spring of 2008, with most students on summer break, York's student union passed a motion to deny resources, space, recognition, or funding to groups they called anti-choice.
We're the only group on campus that was affected by it, and basically what they said was they're not going to receive funding, nor are they going to help us in any way. So one of the repercussions of that is we can't book a room in the student center to have a speech because it will be most likely voted down. If they don't want to fund us, that's fine, but the issue is that they ought to allow us to speak wherever we want to speak on campus. That's why this is a freedom of speech issue.
According to Payton, the student union's justifications for the motion were suspicious.
So basically their justifications fall into three different categories. The first is basically that it's offensive in some way, right? To which we reply that just because something's offensive doesn't mean you can ban it. They, obviously, knowing that they couldn't justify it, just disregarded it in favor of a second appeal, which was basically that everyone agrees with us, which is kind of an odd justification, because if everyone agrees with you, then the ban is completely superfluous. There's no reason to have a ban if everyone agrees with you. Thirdly, they also said that they're not required to have funding for every group that applies to it.
Later, York Student Union convinced the Canadian Federation of Students, a national union tied to more than 80 campuses across Canada, to support any student union which denied money and recognition to pro-life campus clubs. The motion states, "Be it resolved that member locals of the CFS that refuse to allow anti-choice organizations access to their resources and space be supported. And further, be it resolved that a pro-choice organization kit be created that may include materials such as a fact sheet, buttons, contact information for local pro-choice organizations, and research on anti-choice organizations and the conservative think tanks that fund them." Payton and Sosha say they weren't surprised by the Federation's decision to declare itself a pro-choice organization.
The thing with the Canadian Federation of Students is that they don't just see themselves as a student union, which is what they ought to be. They see themselves as a union which can have an opinion and push their agenda on all kinds of social issues.
The main issue for Payton and Sosha is that all full-time students of CFS member schools must pay a mandatory union due of $7.20. The organization collects fees from over 500,000 students.
So they want to take a position on abortion, they want to take a position on gay marriage, they want to take a position on the war in Afghanistan. So I might disagree, and in fact I'm sure that I do disagree with their opinions on all three of those issues, yet I, as a student at York University, am forced to pay money into this CFS.
And I think I have less of a problem with it engaging in some social issues, because I do think that they're important. And some of the issues that they choose to fight on, I do agree with. But what I think is problematic is that they're not accountable to students in the way they ought to be. I have no problem in saying that that these groups systemically limit discussions and debate and aren't accountable to anyone. It's defining what is the CFS role, right? Or how do students interact with the CFS on like a large scale or even on a small scale. But the point is that those discussions haven't happened.
To be fair in our reporting, we contacted both the Canadian Federation of Students and members of the York Federation of Students. Numerous phone calls and emails were not returned. But the students at York University aren't alone. On campuses all across Canada, pro-life groups are facing opposition, denied resources and space. Pro-life groups at McGill University, the University of British Columbia Okanagan, Carleton University, Lakehead, and Guelph University are also facing opposition from their student unions. Amanda Country and CARA BENNINGER are students at Lakehead and Guelph University. In 2007, Lakehead's pro-life group was denied club status for posting approved flyers the student union called controversial.
We're just trying to express our voice. We're not trying to convert anyone. We're just trying to make more options available to students, and they're not letting us.
At the time of this interview, Benninger's pro-life group, Life Choice, had full status at Guelph University.
We went through the normal procedure to become a club, but we've received a lot of protesters at some of our events, and just from students who don't necessarily agree with our position on abortion.
Following this interview, Life Choice's status was revoked after Guelph's student union claimed they handed out misinformation and created an unsafe environment at a school event. Recently, the school dropped the allegations and reinstated the club's status. Lakehead's battle, however, is ongoing. In the U.S., pro-life campus groups face different challenges, but the executive director of Students for Life of America says she's keeping an eye on Canada.
Because whatever's going to go on here, they're going to try to trickle it down to the states, I have a feeling, in the next few years. We've got state-run schools, then private schools. State schools, they have to allow the pro-lifers to have a group. Now the funding will come from the student government, so that's a little bit different. But private schools don't have to allow pro-lifers to have groups. If a state school denies one of our groups, we have free legal groups out there who will come to the rescue and immediately press a lawsuit onto that campus, forcing them to have a group.
Speaking at a conference for National Campus Life Network, Hawkins says the pro-life movement is evolving beyond its old, aggressive image.
So our groups they'll go out from the clinics, they'll show the pictures, but then they'll also show a different side of the pro-life movement, one that people don't often think about. They'll hold baby showers for women on their campus who are pregnant. They'll hold diaper drives where they'll raise funds, and then they'll also ask students to donate diapers to give to a local pregnancy resources center. One group we have does daycare. They do free babysitting on certain weeknights. So if young moms need to study, need a break, they can drop their kids off at a location and they're being cared for by pro-life students. It's not like we're saying, oh, have the child, we don't care about you afterwards. We do care. And that's why the pro-life movement is so broad. We're all focused on different areas.
For the students at York, the topic of discussion isn't the issue. Protecting their right to debate that topic is.
The only thing you successfully do when you ban an entire issue is to make everyone ignorant about it.
If it's okay to discuss it in an ethics class, I don't see why the YFS thinks that you can't discuss it in the student center where they can exert their influence. Doesn't make sense to me.
Both men say faith-based organizations as well as atheist groups have shown support. On campus, they're working hard to raise awareness.
We've now made a petition. We're having people sign it. We're trying to basically raise awareness of it. We'd like to have it so that we have the identical number of signatures of people opposing this policy as the number of people who voted them in.
The club, Sosha says, is carrying on and is actually growing because of the student union.
Last year, I don't think there were many people who knew of what Students for Bioethical Awareness was, except those who had been members previously. This year, there were people walking by saying, you know, I know who you guys are. I heard what happened with the YFS. I want to join the club. So it's had the opposite effect of their original intention. So
okay.
For now, both Peyton and Sosha say they'll continue to disagree on most things, but they'll fight alongside each other to shed light on the battle for freedom of speech on Canada's campuses. In Burlington, Ontario, I'm Bridget Antwi for 100 Huntley Street.